So we all know we were supposed to have a service last night, but St. Joe County was in the red, Elkhart was in the orange in terms of travel advisories, and the executive committee and myself and St. David's Elkhart and a bunch of others all agreed that it was just not safe last night, especially given that it was dark. So the result of that is twofold. First, the gospel for Christmas Eve is the Lucan Christmas story, where we hear of the birth of Jesus. The gospel for Christmas morning is that wonderful poetic section from 1 John. In the beginning was the Word. What is unfortunate, I think, when we do Christmas Day but not Christmas morning, is that we don't hear the Christmas story. And what is unfortunate, I think, when we do Christmas Eve without Christmas Day, which for Episcopalians is nearly always, is that we hear the Christmas story without the beautiful theology behind it. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh. The other thing about not having last night is that I had two sermons planned, one for last night and one for this morning. Now, since I was planning on roughly 50 to 60 people last night and about 5 people this morning, I planned my home run service for last night. My home run sermon for last night. And today's was just kind of a bunt. Therefore, you're getting last night's sermon, which revolves around that Lucan Christmas story. I will bring in John, but my sermon this morning revolves around the Christmas story. Those of you who were here, oh goodness, years ago now, may remember that the nativity set that I have in my home was my parents' nativity set from before I was born. Yes, Mom and Dad? I loved that nativity set. My sister and I both did. And so when my parents were trying to downsize things, and they called me and said, "You don't want the nativity set, do you?" I think I squealed. I was so joyful at receiving that old, many times broken, many times super glued back together nativity set. Mom and Dad, you'll be happy to know that we have continued our Christmas tradition of always breaking a piece of it. This year, we set up the nativity set. Remember that Lee is a senior in high school, so she has a very big, very heavy backpack to take with her every day. And we now have our bonus child, Chris, living with us, who also has her very big, heavy backpack to take to school. And they're trying to put their backpacks on their backs, all in our little entryway. And so the first Monday after we had set up the nativity set, Lee went and slung her backpack up on her shoulder and knocked the poor shepherd out of the stable and onto the ground. He has no legs below the knees at this point in time. And Lee was all upset and sent me a text apologizing. And I said, "No worries. This poor shepherd has been broken before. You can see his hair is colored in from where one of us, me or my sister, broke off part of his head. The shepherd has been broken together. I'll super glue him." And so he was set on the counter next to the sink in the kitchen, which is where Brad and I put all the things that need to be done. And there he has sat all of Advent. He never made it to the stable. And I was feeling kind of bad for our poor little shepherd. Look, he's like so mournfully playing his like oboe or whatever this is. You can just hear him, "It's Christmas and I have no feet." I was feeling bad for this poor little shepherd until last night. I went to go get the baby Jesus. You see, our nativity set has a baby Jesus that is not attached to anything, not attached to Mary's arms, not attached to the manger. And so another old tradition dating back to before I was born is that the baby Jesus stays hidden away. And when Santa comes, the baby Jesus also appears in the stable. And so my sister and I would wake up in the morning and we'd run and look at the tree, and then we'd run and we'd go, "Baby Jesus came," because yeah, we were those kids. I'm so glad we were too. Now, because I am not nearly as good at hiding things as my parents were, the kids figured out pretty quickly that the baby Jesus was hidden on the counter next to the sink, which is where Brad and I put all the things that need to be done or to happen. And once they figured out where I hid him, I stopped hiding him. I just started putting him in a little bowl with all the paper clips on the counter next to the kitchen sink. And last night when I went to go get the baby Jesus, do you know what I saw? I saw the baby Jesus lying in a bowl with all the paper clips and the broken shepherd lying next to him. Do you get where I'm going with this? Our shepherd was so broken, he never made it to the stable. But it's okay, because Jesus laid with him in his woundedness all along. And isn't that really a pretty good part of what Christmas is about, and that wonderful Christmas story? Oftentimes, we can feel like we are too broken and too wounded to even begin to approach Jesus. Oftentimes, other things pull us in other directions, and we just fail to go and meet Jesus. But you know what? In those moments, when we are distracted, when we are broken, when we are wounded beyond belief, our God lies right next to us, sits with us, because Jesus is Emmanuel, God with us. And that Emmanuel is with us no matter how broken we may be, no matter how wounded, no matter how distracted. Jesus is with us, just waiting for us to notice, to open our eyes and to see him. And so, yes, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh, and the flesh walked the streets, the roads, the wilderness of the Holy Land, and then died on a cross and rose again and was ascended into heaven. And now, today and always, my friends. He sits with Terry, with Cindy, with Brad, with Scott, with Cindy and Bruce, with Bob and Georgia, and Bob and Kay and Steve and my parents, and all of you on Zoom. He sits with all of us, no matter how broken, no matter how wounded, no matter how distracted. He is our Emmanuel, God with us. And that makes for a very Merry Christmas indeed. Amen.